Love Scout episode 7 and 8. Again, just a beautiful masterclass in chemistry and tension. There's so many moments in these two episodes that really solidified to me that this is quite literally my favorite rom-com right now for this year. The year has just started and I think this is going to be the best romance that this year's got to offer, which is a crazy claim to make, but it's just hitting so many things so well. And I want to talk about it some more. Hi, I'm Monique. I am the host of Off by Purple Art podcast, where I talk to you about K-dramas, C-dramas, BTS, and so much more. And Love Scout has been impressing me week by week. Episode 7, and it leaves us basically right where we left off in episode 6, where they were going to this gorgeous recital together and listening to this beautiful piano music. They see each other across the street and they kind of come towards each other. The music crescendos and it's this really gorgeous moment, and it just continues right into episode 7. What sticks out to me is why they were in the concert hall and we're sitting next to each other, the amount of times that Mrs. Kang wanted to reach over and grab Eunho's hand, and she has to physically restrain herself from not doing it. And you can see that they're slowly trying to shift towards one another like magnets, and they keep pulling themselves back. And just the interplay of the piano music, which I think was a very pointed choice from the director, and showing the rising tension and yearning that's almost physically painful for them in that first scene, really set the benchmark on how incredible this episode was going to play out. And everything that continued in the episode really tugged at my heartstrings. I absolutely love this female lead so much. I mean, I think Mrs. Kang, and I refer to her as Mrs. Kang versus like her full like first name whatever, because I think of her as such a girl boss, and I don't mean that in the sardonic way that we use online, but I mean in truly the sense a girl boss, that she is just so beautifully complex. And I think Han Ji-min does a really good job with this character. She does not make her one note. She appears very stoic, yet there's so much color and vibrance to her. And I love that she can be so forthright. In this episode, she just flats out tells him that yes, I like you. They have this big confrontation scene, and she's been trying to avoid him as much as humanly possible because it's distracting her from her work. She keeps just staring off and disassociating and just gazing at him and daydreaming about him and just seeing how incredible a person he is. And it's just like all in Technicolor now. And it just comes to the point in episode where it's like, something's got to change. So she wants to fire him at first, which kind of brings everything back to like the first episode and the second episode, where he initially comes on as a secretary and she's really not here for it. But now it's such a different reasoning, and she was really having a hard time with it. And then just to finally just frankly tell him, yeah, I have feelings for you. I like you. This has nothing to do with you. It's not your fault that I've been cold and standoffish. This is my problem to fix. I will deal with it. And just seeing all that unveiled from that, it was actually so painful for Eunho to have her continuously reject him in a way. And I just absolutely loved the yearning and the chemistry, and it just kept building and building and building. And I genuinely felt so bad for Mrs. Kang. Like, I was brought to tears multiple times because I just so badly wanted them to get together, which is like the fun in watching romance, is genuinely having two actors who know what they're doing. But I genuinely have to give Jimin her credit, because she does a remarkable job. She is doing a lot of heavy lifting in the show. Both actors are doing their work, but I had to give her a spotlight in this episode because she was phenomenal. Like, I believed everything that was coming from her. I knew exactly where the character's coming from, and I felt so bad. And just even the littlest of moments, when they're walking side by side, still in their immaculate suits, her in that amazing cream colored suit with the beautiful pants that flows like the skirt, And him and that beautiful burgundy suit that's just so well cut, and their hands are constantly brushing up against one another. Like, the cinematography of that alone was gorgeous. The hands, the romance in the hand connection was taking me out. Oh, and the catharsis and the relief of the entire sequence of the movie. So there is the best friend of Eun-ho, and she's like the second female lead, and she's obviously shown so much interest, and she's finally worked up the courage to ask him out on a date. And this is where everything is kind of crystallizing between him and Mrs. Kang, and they still cannot admit the feelings that they have towards one another. And he accepts this date, but thinking of it as just friends, where the second female lead, she absolutely intends to cross over to the romance barrier and not just be that best friend that, you know, sometimes hangs out with him and his kid, and then her son kind of comes along into the play. You know, so having our female lead, having Mrs. Kang finally say, no, enough's enough. Forget the job, forget the professionalism, forget all that stuff. I am just so physically pent up with how much yearning I have for this man that I have to admit it. I cannot let him go on this date. The entire sequence of her running towards him going on the date, and then last minute saying no and canceling it and running towards her, and them almost missing one another, but them staring at one another, and just the tension building and building and building. And then him calling her on the phone to notify her that I can see you across the street. And when she turns to lock eyes after he says, I'm watching, and he's watching her, the entire interplay of all of that, right down to the kiss, the level of catharsis that was in that, I was so completely compelled and hooked line and sinker into this episode. Y'all don't understand. I was so well fed by the acting, by the music, by the lighting, by the cinematography, by everything, that episode 7 could have just been the finale of the show, and I would have been so satisfied. But luckily we still had more to go, which leads us into episode 8. And now they're in their dating era, and it was just as cute as I thought it was going to be. I was so gagged. I loved so much of it. I loved how they flirt with one another. I loved how smiley they both were. I loved the blushing. I loved that she just can tell him matter-of-factly that he's amazing and that he's incredible now, and that he can receive that information and take it in and blush. Like, just as much as he is giving to her, I love that in her ways that she's able to reciprocate, and she was showering him with the compliments, and you can tell how much she loves his professional integrity and just how insightful he is, and how his back history in being human resource and being very good at his job interplays into how he's able to show up for her as a secretary, which kind of leads into the last part of episode 8, to be honest. But their chemistry was so good. I could have just had an entire episode of them flirting and being funny and cute, along with Beol kind of noticing that her dad's acting a little bit strange. The reveals to his friends, who are Mrs. Kang's co-workers as well, was perfect. It makes sense that they would figure it out first and foremost. And I enjoyed all of it so much. The last part of the episode of episode 8 reminds me that this is still a romance drama, and as much as it can get cutesy, there is still like the subplot of Mrs. Kim and her underhandedness and her trying to take over people's, which is Mrs. Kang's scouting firm, her headhunting firm. And there's that very, very real threat, and just the amount of dramatic tension that was built in the final moments, where I genuinely felt so upset for her. I wanted to claw the face of every single male that was in that frigging party. Every last one of them. I was just so irate, and even I felt protective of her as a viewer. So for Eun-ho to come in that last minute and physically put himself as a barrier between her and all the others, and to lay down the gauntlet to say, yes, I am her secretary, and it is my job to service her and service her alone and be what she needs, was chef's kiss. The entire storyline of Mrs. Kim, as irksome as it is, I feel like it's very good to keep the show grounded in reality, for it not to go too fluffy in the air. As much as I am enjoying the fluffy moments, it really grounds you, remembers that there's still a lot of work to be done and still a lot of character growth. And I also have to commend this show for even like the subplots that are self-contained in the episodes. With every new client that she tries to acquire, somehow I'm always brought to tears in some way, shape, or form. The show will have its light moments and its levity, but when it gets serious, and the whole storyline of the mother who's a lawyer and trying her hardest to juggle between being this lawyer and having all these heavy cases while still showing up for her son, breathtaking. Like, I was sobbing. And the fact is, everyone in the show are competent actors. Everyone from the adult performers to the children are great actors. Like, there hasn't been one misstep yet in the casting of this show. There's so much about this show that works and gels together. It blows my mind. Like, I did not expect to enjoy Love Scout as much as I have, but it's truly been really rewarding, and episodes 7 and 8 are still so good, and I'm looking forward to so much more. Let me know in the comment section, how are you finding Love Scout? Are you as enamored with it as I am? I'm completely enchanted by the chemistry of it all. As I said, all the performances are strong. I'm even enjoying the subplots that don't even involve the male and the female lead, but the female lead and the male lead are exactly what bringing me into the show. It's just all rounder a good show. I don't know what you're doing if you haven't been watching the show. I'm assuming if you've been watching and listening to my podcast about it, that you are following along with me. If you're listening via Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please interact with those platforms as well. I do appreciate it. Till the next episode.